I've had clients saying like, hey, we wanted you to create an app. And after that initial conversation, it sounds like what you want is a pamphlet.
Hey, engagers, and welcome to the Professor Game Podcast. And here, as you know, we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking to help us multiply retention and crush churn. I'm Rob Alvarez. I'm a consultant. I'm a founder of Professor Game and also a professor at places like IE Business School, EBS University, EFMD, and many other places around the world. And before we dive into the interview, as you heard in that quick snippet, sometimes, we need to make sure we really understand what it is that we are aiming for. And that is one of the things that I talk about in some of the free resources I have on our free community. So if you think that could be something useful for you, go down to the description, click on the link below, and find us there on our free community. See you there. So engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game Podcast. And we have Dain. How's that pronounced?
Dain, yeah.
Dain. We have Dain with us today. So Dain, we do need to know, are you prepared to engage?
I'm prepared to engage, yes.
Dain is a Philly-based storyteller, designer, and creative director making beautiful, immersive experiences. They run Reckless Magic, an interactive storytelling label, and curate Futurefull, an interfuturist storytelling collective. Lots of interesting stuff in a very short and brief bio, which I love, by the way, Dain. So thanks for that. Is there anything that we're missing, though, from all this stuff that you're doing?
I'm always probably working on too many things, so I think it's a good place to start.
Fantastic. So you said too many things happening at the same time. If we were around you for a day or a week, I don't know, what would that look like? What are the kinds of things that are happening in your days or weeks?
Right now, I think it's at the beginning of June. We are in the process of ramping up this massive theatrical TTRPG called Space Opera. So that is something where we get over 40 players into a room. We split them off into sort of spacefaring societies, and they work together to solve problems on a galactic scale. And right now we're in rehearsals for that. During the day, I'm doing my client work, consulting with nonprofits and things like that about how they can bring interactive storytelling into their practice. And then in the evening, we are writing music, we are GMing, we are creating iconography, set design, all
GMing, game mastering, I'm guessing. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm one of the two game masters on the project. And we kind of co-DM it because when you have over 40 players at a time, it's kind of too much for one person. So we tag team that. And yeah, it's just a lot of iteration and creation. So that'll split me between, my home studio where I do some music production, game design and consulting, and then kind of bopping off to wherever in the city we need to be in order to sort of bring these experiences to life.
Lots of exciting stuff going on. And Dain, from all that stuff that is constantly going on, all your experience that you have, I'm sure you've had the ups, you've had the downs. I'd like to focus on one of those that you would perhaps call the fail or a first attempt in learning. We want to be there with you. We want to see what happened. How did you come out of it? What will be some lessons? We want to live that story as much as you. Well, and you're a storyteller, so that's not something I have to tell you, right?
Yeah. I'll say, so before sort of my current iteration, I ran a game studio called Cypher Prime. We made a bunch of indie games back during that first indie game boom that happened in the early 2010s. And we didn't originally start off as a game studio. We started off as an interactive design company and kind of stumbled into games. We made a game to show off what we could do because we needed that portfolio piece, and people loved it so much. We're like, hey, what if we just kept doing this forever? And that was a lot of fun. But I think around our second or third game, we had this idea for a game called Tailwind. The idea would be that you would be a little ship in a shmup, a shoot 'em up kind of game where Galaga, that situation. But we wanted something where rather than shooting things forward, you would have this flame out the back that you could almost use like a whip and really play with this feeling of exploration and agility. And we worked on that idea for, I want to say, 5, 6, 7 months, and nothing worked. Every felt bad. We tried an open map, that felt bad. We tried doing the vertical thing like an old arcade cabinet, that felt bad. Enemies felt bad. All the movement felt bad. But there was something about this idea of a tailwind that felt really good. And eventually we ended up shelving it. It was a couple of hard months. We took a break, came back to it, a couple more hard months. We poured a lot of time, effort, and dev and manpower into this thing, and it just didn't work. So we put it to the side and said, like, okay, maybe that's just not something that will ever, sort of come to light. And then about like 8 years later, we got an offer to produce a game for the Humble Bundle folks. And we started working on a completely different shmup idea, not using the same mechanics, but just like, let's just do, we want to do a little bullet hell situation, a little bit of Ikaruga situation. And about 2 weeks into that process, but my business partner at the time and I looked at each other and was like, oh, this is Tailwind. This is the thing that we had wanted to make 8 years ago. So yeah, I think sometimes failure is temporary. An idea might not be ready yet. That was our second attempt at making a commercial product. We probably just didn't have the skill at the time to pull off what we were trying to do. We hadn't had the experiences. We hadn't really gelled as a team yet. There's a million reasons why it could have failed. But I think it just comes down to sometimes an idea comes when the time comes. It's ready when the time comes. And when we did actually release that sort of tease of Tailwind 8 years after the original idea, it was pretty well received. Yeah, I think sometimes failure is temporary.
I was going to ask about that because, clearly it's, it just happened and then it came back. It could have been the case, and it could also have been the case that it never came back, right? Like,
Absolutely,
it's just part of the system. Is there something that you'd have done differently? Like, of course, not when it actually did work, but the 8 years before when you started it, would you have spent less time on it, or tried to push forward, or I don't know, like just looking back, of course, in hindsight, everything's easier. But, now that you have that hindsight, is there something that you would have changed or something that gives you to look into the future? Like, oh, now I approach things like this.
Honestly, I can't think of something that we would have done differently at the beginning that wouldn't have made the 8 years in between necessary. I felt like there was something necessary in us. Like, we put out our first game. It happened to be a pretty big success. It happened to enable us to sort of move out of doing client work and got us a lot of attention. And we were going to like game developer conferences and giving talks. And like we had never really done it before. And so when you have an early success like that, it can be really easy to set your own expectations for your next project way too high. And I think that it was a necessary part of our growth as artists, as creators, and as business people also, to learn, hey, we can take a swing and miss and it won't kill us. Like, I think that was actually the really important thing for us to learn. Like, oh, we actually have room to fail here. It's okay. This isn't going to work out. Let's move on to a new idea. Let's further some of these other business relationships, deepen our practice.
And that's fine.
And that's fine. It's okay. It's not like the end of the world that our second game out the gate didn't immediately have the same success as our extremely lucky first.
That is a very, very good takeaway. Success just happens sometimes. And there are many things, like there's many strategies, many things you can try and do to change a part of that. But it all comes down to, you also have to make a swing and a miss. That's fine. And be comfortable with it. I always like to say when I'm in my I do workshops and I do that kind of stuff, I always like to tell people, like, when, especially with your initial ideas, you want to come in with the intention, not of, how you're going to make this work, but rather what is wrong about my thinking right now. And I'm coming to this testing to figure that out so that I can make it better eventually. And hopefully make it work. So I can definitely relate to that right now. So Dain, I love that. And you this is kind of a fail, as you were saying, initial fail that turned into a success. Is there a story of success, something that you created, some purposeful design for something that was beyond entertainment as well, that you created, that you were especially fond of or proud of? We would like to be in that story with you and live through what happened.
I'll do a quick one, and then if we could do something a little juicier if we want. So after I was with Cypher Prime, I was looking for more ways to use that sort of game dev skill set to like help my community a bit more. So I actually transitioned from making games into journalism. So I was working with the paper of record for Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Inquirer, for about 5 years, and I worked there as an interactive journalist. So
Cool.
what that ends up looking like is how do we take the normal storytelling of the news where you're given facts and figures and charts and diagrams and photos and whatnot. How do we take that and make it something that the reader can interact with, whether that is to get more context or that it is to go more in depth into specific areas, or even just to have a deeper appreciation of the topic by being able to kind of alter the story on their own, right? The silly version of this was, I don't know, this news probably didn't reach where you are, but there is a stable in the north of the city that is the Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club. They serve sort of, underprivileged youth and allow them to raise and rear and ride horses through the city. It's really a wonderful program. And they had just gotten a new horse that happened to escape early in the morning and tore down one of our major highways trying to get back to wherever it come from. And people caught video of that just wild sight of this massive stallion just like charging down I-95. When I got into work that morning, I saw it and I was like, well, obviously we have to make a game out of this. And it was a weird swing for news because it's not necessarily communicating more information, but we did make essentially like an infinite runner with a horse. So you're going, you have to jump over and dodge, construction barriers and get coffee to keep your energy up, or your horsepower, I think we called it. But we're also able in that to like show how far the horse got up 95 before authorities were able to, get it and bring it back. And that was just fun. It was a bit of having fun and connection on a local scale that we don't really get a chance to do in news, where everything can sometimes feel very serious and somber and dire, and it's the paper of record. We have to take everything seriously. And I think that there is real power in using joy to connect people to the stories that surround them as much as gravitas. And one of the fun things from that was obviously the riding club saw this game, saw how much attention it was getting, thought it was fantastic, and they actually reached out to me, and I got a chance to ride that horse. And then I wrote an essay about that experience. So it started off as this like way of saying to our community, hey, we see you. And then it turned into the community saying, hey, we see you as well. So it became this moment of connection and community where I think most people would have just like created the article, say exactly what happened, and moved on as if it wasn't worth commenting on. So that felt particularly successful, albeit in a silly way.
Absolutely. No, and it makes sense. It had a purpose. It was not the game for the game's sake, right? It probably was a good game as well. Like you could play it and it was fun, but it was also helping you communicate what happened and connecting back to the community. Like it had all these things, all these elements as well that were meaningful, made the game meaningful as well. And as you were mentioning, it had a follow-up and all that. Like it is, I'm not saying how much money it made because I have no idea if it made money or not. And yet I would say it was a success.
Absolutely. Yeah. Success isn't always monetary.
Exactly. So Dain, with all this experience in immersive experiences, immersive, interactive storytelling, game studio, all this stuff that you've created, if somebody comes in with the kinds of problems that you solve nowadays, how does that happen? Like they come in, they ask you for something. Is it client work? Is it you approach them? And what happens after? Like, do you have a process? Do you have a series of steps? Do you have how does that actually work? How do you solve the problems you want to solve with your interactive and immersive storytelling?
Yeah, I think that, one of the lessons we took from that Tailwind experience is that you have to trust the experience to tell you what it wants to be, right? And so what that can end up looking like in my client work is oftentimes people will come to me to say, we have a story that we want to tell, or we have information that we need to give. That might look like a museum exhibit, for instance. That might look like an online platform. That might look like some mapping tools to see what's happening in an area. And people will usually come in hot being like, oh, we need an app that does this, or we need a game that does this, or we need an exhibit that does that. And I try and slow down there. And it's like, is that what you need? Is the shape
Slow
of the
down
thing
the
that
horses,
you're saying,
right?
Yeah, slow your horse. Yeah. Tell me the story you're trying to tell. How are you trying to connect with the audience? What emotion do you want them to have? What information should they walk away with? How are they different after having experienced your story than they were at the beginning of it? Let's start there, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't tell stories just to hear ourselves talk. We tell stories to connect, right? And we listen to stories. And one of the reasons that, Hollywood and TV is a multi-billion-dollar industry is because when we take in a story that resonates with us, the best stories can change us for the better, change how we see the world, change how we see each other. And so if we don't start with that very empathetic human connection, it's very easy to just slap a leaderboard on an app somewhere and call it done, right? So that's the first place to start. It's how do you want people to feel? What are they supposed to learn? How are they supposed to change as a result of having experienced this? And then from there, we'll talk about blue sky, infinite budget, infinite time, monkeys on infinite typewriters. What would this look like if you had all of that? And I will offer some of my own experience and ideas. Sometimes a client will come in with strong ideas about what it should look like, and I want to honor that. Sometimes clients will come in and say, we have a grant and we have to use it, and we're not the people that come up with these ideas, but we have to fulfill these goals. So those conversations come in, and then we try to pare it down to what actually fits in their budget and time. And then from there, it's just a matter of finding what the experience wants to be. Sometimes that looks like an interactive wall people can touch. And if we do that, we go into some prototyping phases. I try to do as much prototyping off the computer as possible. I find that the computer can get in the way of figuring out whether or not your idea even works. And there's a lot of things you can do with paper prototypes. There's a lot of things you can do with a deck of cards that will tell you whether or not your idea is working before you invest minute one in programming something, right? And then it goes into your normal stage of iteration, beta testing, a few more iterations, polishing, making sure that the design, those emotions inform the design all the way down to what icons are we using? What's the typography going to be like in this experience? Is there music? What should the music sound like? There's all of these things that go into creating the experience that enables the game to deliver meaning. So try and break it down into those 3 steps, and they're all in conversation with each other.
Amazing. Love it because it breaks down all those things. The way you started it reminds me a little bit. I like that you had sort of different things that you have there. I tend to use something that I took from lean manufacturing. It's nothing to do with this. Toyota talks about the 5 whys. You ask why. Oh, you want to create a game, but why do you want to create a game, right? Oh, I want to create a game because I want people to have. Oh, yeah, but why do you want to do that? And just ask why. Their theory says 5 times, doesn't have to be 5, doesn't have to be 4 or 3, it can be 10, right? Until you actually get to that meaningful thing, as you were saying before. So I definitely love that. I can.
I've had clients come in with pretty good sized budgets and saying hey, we wanted you to create an app to do this, that, and the third. And after that initial conversation, it's it sounds like what you want is a pamphlet, and you can get a pamphlet real cheap. You don't need to spend all this money to just give people 5 bullet points of information. Just print a pamphlet and be done with it. That's fine. So I'll never take a client's money for a project if I feel like they can answer their why in a much more accessible way.
That makes a lot. So, Dain, in your experience with your work, is there something that you would say is, again, not a silver bullet, but something that you say, well, if you use this in your project to create those, to achieve that why, to use that interactive, immersive storytelling, it would at least help you. Your project will do a lot better if you think about it this way, or if you do this, or if you do that. Is there something like that, a best practice, let's say?
Yeah, silver bullet. I'm not a big silver bullet guy.
Exactly.
I think if I had to pick one thing, it would be presence. I think that is the thing that comes before empathy, that comes before understanding. There's this great saying that I think comes out of some therapy circles that I've heard, which is be where your feet are. I think, especially interactive designers, we can get a little galaxy brained and just like thinking about like all of the different things that could exist or might exist, all of the different ways that like, what if this person comes in? What if that person comes in? What if they hit this interaction a minute earlier than we were expecting and we're in our heads? And so when I find that I am in the middle of producing an experience and I'm feeling lost, or I don't know what to do next, or I feel like there's so many things to do next that I don't know which of these things is actually important to work on, taking a moment to become present, both in like a rote kind of like mindfulness sense, but also being present with the experience and kind of letting go of everything that I think that it should be and being present with what it is. That is always my sort of go-to for understanding, oh, I'm gilding the lily. This doesn't need any more work in this part, but I have forgotten completely to manage this part of a transition, or I've, the fonts are beautiful, but the colors are completely inconsistent, or the design is great. The fonts and the colors are fantastic here, but I'm just now realizing that this text wants to have narration. Those kinds of things come where I'm like taking a minute, taking a lap, going outside, walking around the block, and coming back to it with some fresh eyes and just engaging with the product as it actually is, and not what you said in the RFP, not what you said in the blueprints or the idea of what you think it might be in the future. Coming back, being present, reconnecting with that why, reconnecting with that empathy, and then figuring out what is the next biggest piece that I can work on that will move this experience closer to the vision that we have.
Good stuff.
That's hard.
Good stuff.
Let me be clear about that. It's a simple thing, saying be present. It's not easy. It's a very difficult thing to do.
It's an easy statement.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I find anybody that gives you advice that starts with the word just isn't being super kind. It's very easy to say, oh, just do this. You're not the one doing it. There's no just about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping up with those recommendations, those justs, right? is there somebody that makes you curious? Like hearing the questions that we've asked, the interactions we've had, somebody you would like to hear as a featured guest on the podcast, somebody maybe that inspired you, somebody you've never met, somebody who's not even alive. I don't know. Not nowadays with these chat GPTs and that stuff. Maybe you can create an interview out of the body of work of somebody who's not here.
Yes, I need to look up how to pronounce their last name, but they are a game designer that works with some of the crew from Dimension 20 and The Worlds Beyond Number. Maisie Veselak is their name. They are a game designer. They've created custom modules, custom classes for Dungeons and Dragons. And in seeing some of Maisie's work, they are so good at taking an emotion that a player should feel and turning that into systems that enable that emotion. They've created a custom witch class for Dungeons and Dragons that allows a player to step into this feeling of being connected to craft and community, but still enables all of the traditional like Hollywood and game and story witches that we've grown up with. And it's such a delicate balancing act with just words, right? Just words and systems, no programming, none of that, to perfectly capture a vibe, to perfectly capture a system that enables a type of play, and to give that to players in a way that everything mechanically makes sense. All the systems reinforce who you are supposed to be acting as, and it is incredibly accessible. And I know Maisie did this, in concert with the people that run the podcast and various, like, we don't ever create anything alone, but their insight onto how to create these game playing systems, I would really love to see.
Amazing. You'll have to give me some tips on how to write it so I can look them up for sure. How about a book? Is there any book that you would recommend people hearing the podcast? Remember, like, people are trying, like you, to create meaningful experiences, things that have a purpose, it goes beyond the obviously visible.
Yeah, there's a couple books. There is Immersive Storytelling for Real and Imagined Worlds. That one is really good practical advice. That's Margaret Kerrison who wrote that. They're a former Imagineer at Disney, worked on a lot of Disney World type, Epcot type projects. And they have very good insight into the nuts and bolts of how to create good immersive experiences. I would also always recommend everybody read Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. This one isn't an interactive storytelling book. This is a lot more on being an effective organizer and for making change in our world. But a lot of the points that she makes in drawing inspiration from the natural world, how people connect, and really there's a truly profound power that storytellers have to change the shape of the story that we all live in. And I don't think a lot of people really tap into that power, not even as a superpower sense, but more as a responsibility. It's one of the things that I found when I was working in journalism was seeing in the transition from a story leaving an interviewee's mouth, being processed through the journalist and the writer, then going through the editor who creates the headlines and cuts this, that, and the third, then its placement on the front page, the things that are considered to be front page news versus not. There are so many hands affecting how the experience of that story is actually delivered. And I don't think that we understand or appreciate how much responsibility there is in the way that we tell stories and in the way that we enable people to tell their own stories. And I think that Adrienne Marie Brown's book is very good at touching on a lot of those parts of it, like the parts where the stories that we tell and the experiences that we create enable real change in the world that we live in.
They sound like very, very powerful books. That is for sure. So Dain, keeping up with those recommendations, now looking at yourself, what would you say is your superpower? That thing that you do at least better than most other people?
My superpower. I think that I am good at hearing messy thoughts and crystallizing them, making them more focused, creating a brand statement, for instance, or a mission statement out of 17 people's sort of different feels and vibes and desires. Really simplifying and clarifying and creating this focused lens that we can then use as a touchstone for the rest of the project. And on the flip side of that, I think I'm good at taking ideas that come with that clarity and say, we want to create an experience that does X. And then taking that and expanding it out into that could look like a million different things. That can look like 15,000 different things. Let's go through all of those and see which one of them then feel good. So condensing and refining messy ideas and complicating simple ones feels like, the two halves of my brain constantly bickering.
They sound like it's a single thing at the same time that it's two things, but they complement each other so directly that it does definitely. I agree that it sounds like it feels like it's definitely a one big superpower, especially in your world and the kind of work that you do. I think it makes sense and it's very, very useful as well. And now we get to the difficult one, Dain. What would you say is your favorite game?
Favorite game? Oof. I don't know how to answer that. There's so many different kinds of games. It's like saying like, what's your favorite game? It's like, what's your favorite word? It really depends on what you are in the mood for, what I'm in the mood for. I love Hades. I think that was a really well designed action experience, and the way that story is delivered through Hades is mind boggling. There's so much dialogue, so much recorded audio, and it always feels accurate. So that's a beautiful experience. There's a TTRPG, a role playing game called Roll for Shoes that I've really fallen in love with. That is a 6-rule RPG. And I think the best thing about it is that everybody starts with one ability called Do Anything. And you can roll one die about it. And whenever you roll all 6s, you get a new ability at a higher level. That is, so you go from like Do Anything 1 to like Kick Doors 2 or something like that. And what I love about it is it enables, a lot of times when you want to play a game like that with people, there's like hours of prep. You got to figure out what your character sheet looks like, what stats are you pulling, what's your backstory, all this kind of stuff. With a game like this, you really can just like sit down with people, start telling a story. And as people roll the dice and gain these additional abilities, you discover who your characters are as you play. And it makes it very accessible and a lot of fun and very silly. So I've really fallen in love with Roll for Shoes as a system. And then, I don't know, Tag. Tag's a great game. Very simple. Just to be able to run around in the field and find joy in moving your body and kind of evasion. I feel like those really simple experiences, those really like childlike playground experiences of what a game is, where it's almost not clear where the game begins and ends. You know, a game of tag can just end because you're tired and you just, walk off, maybe get some water, cool off, and then all of a sudden your buddy taps you on the shoulder and says you're it and runs off. And it's like, oh, we're back in the game? Right. That to me really exemplifies how much of a part of our lives and how much of a part of like just human nature it is to just play. So yeah, I love tag in that way, and football, soccer in that way as well. You don't need a lot for it. It can just be two people on a ball and you're kicking around. So yeah, I love those experiences that feel really easy to get into and really invite people to remember what playing as a child felt like.
Love it. Very, very good stuff. Very relatable for sure as well. So Dain, we are running out of time. So before we take off, we would like to know where we can find out more about you, your work, what you're doing before we actually say it's game over.
Yeah. Well, everything is on my website. That is dainsaint.com, DAIN. From there, you can find more information about Reckless Magic, which is the service that I provide for institutions that want to create these experiences. You can also find out more information about Futurefull, which is the community that I'm now curating as I'm finding more and more marginalized creators that want to step into interactive storytelling, but don't necessarily have a community in which to do that. But yeah, dainsaint.com has everything. Newsletters there, link to my Instagram if you'd rather follow me there. I'm trying to get off of the social media stuff right now because it feels bad. It feels like it feels like a poorly designed game, honestly. So I'm trying to step away from that, but I also do try to meet people where they are. So there's that tension to deal with. But yeah, dainsaint.com.
Love it. Have a great one looking at all of those places with Dain. Connect with him wherever you feel is best, Engagers. However, Dain and Engagers, as you know, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, Engagers, and thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast. And since you're interested in this world of creating motivation, engagement, loyalty using game-inspired solutions, how about you join us on our free online community at Professor Game on School? You can find the link right below in the description, but the main thing is to click there, join us. It's a platform called School. It's for free. and you'll find plenty of resources there. We'll be up to date with everything that we're doing, any opportunities that we might have for you. And of course, before you go on to your next mission, before you click continue, please remember to subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.